So just a quick look at the agenda today, and then a quick announcement. So we're have the lunch and networking here. Really grateful. We're going to be talking about our sponsors here. Really grateful for San Diablo Churros, as I mentioned, and also Riot. They weren't able to make it here today, so I'm going to be repping them on their behalf. But they provided lunch today, so big thanks to them. We'll go into our panel discussion. We're going to go for about 45 minutes or so. And then we're going to go into audience questions, so any questions that you have for the panel here. And then afterwards, please feel free to grab some more food, some more churros as we clean up. Quick announcement, the next event is already planned for next month, which is with Matt Durden. He's an author, professor, and PhD, and he specializes in experience design and storytelling. If you haven't heard Matt present, he is incredible. One of the coolest people I've ever met, so that's going to be next month. You can check out on social and on our page the date and time. I believe it's December 14th. At the same time, we're going to be at the Kiln HQ next month. Anyway, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to move here, go into our sponsors. This doesn't want to go. Got a little hum going on. Okay. Yeah, thanks again, Scott, for coming in with those churros. That wasn't planned. He came in last second, literally yesterday. And I know he's a humble dude, and he doesn't want me to brag on him much, but one of the greatest people, so kind. So we appreciate San Diablo and all you do for our community. Yeah, please, thank you. They are doing stuff like this all the time. Don't get close to the, okay, done. They're doing this kind of stuff all the time and always giving back to the community, and I really appreciate the type of person that Scott is, but also everything that they do. So thanks again. Want to talk a little bit about Riot. This thing does not want to go. Let's try it again. Okay, Riot. Riot is a marketing and branding agency. Probably very few of you have heard of them. Has anybody heard of Riot? They're fairly new. But they are just freaking slaying it in their space. I say that and no one's really even heard of them, but it's one of those like cobblers, like the cobbler's children have no shoes type situation. They do like very little marketing branding for themselves because they're always so busy. I've been working with them for probably 8 or so years, and I'll be pretty quick about this, but they're incredible at branding, research, identity design, any type of brand materials. Their creative print, their design is just, every single time I send something to them, they send it back. It's always so good, and I love it because I never have to ask for many revisions. Their content and their production, their video is just top notch. We're going to look at a quick sample of their video right here if it wants to play for us. It was being finicky a second ago. Here we go.
Boy, I got a lot of problems with you. I am about to beat you. I'm a little better than I was meant to get you. A dish you fix you, a cup of coffee to hit you, beat you. Better bounce about to do to rip you into pieces. And nothing pieces of broken pizza teacher. That I'm taking the whole pot. I'm an animal, not your average lion, tiger bear. Oh my intention, so much worse with obsession for bloodthirst.
Land to the sound of this. You won't understand when the pile of bricks. Going with the man, wanna ride the dick. Cause I'm playing some tired of hits. I gotta say, hey, what you gonna say? I can do this every day. I gotta say, hey, what you gonna say? I can do this every day. So give away.
So that's Riot for you. They really are incredible. I love working with their team. They're based out of Salt Lake. They also have an office in Philadelphia. There we go. Also, they do a lot of booth design. I know we're here talking about events, event people here. They do a lot of booth design and production. They work with some of their partners. It can be from as a little involvement as you want them with maybe just a design, or from beginning end to end, where they design it, they work with the team to produce it, and then they can work with shipping to get it to wherever you need it to be. These are just a couple of examples. They almost every time they go to SHOT Show, if you've heard of that, their booth, if you've ever been to SHOT Show, they're usually the award, like the main award-winning booth at the show, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so that's a quick word about Riot, our sponsor. Really grateful to them for providing food today. So just want to show a little bit of gratitude and thanks. So if you guys would, either now or at some time during the presentation, if you open up your phones, check out Riot SLC on Instagram as well as San Diablo Churros. Let's go give them a follow and show some support and some love for being our sponsors today. So that's really all I've got to get started. We'll go ahead and move into the panel. So if we can invite our panelists up to the front, we'll have you guys sit down. We'll jump in to the questions. So let's give them a round of applause as they come up here. All right. So I'm going to be pretty quick about the intros and bios here. I could talk a long time about each of you and the incredible things that you do. Stephanie Christensen here, she's the owner of SC Events, recently kind of went out and started doing stuff on your own. If I'm not mistaken, you please correct me, anybody, if I get anything wrong here. But also, with some of your background, she's done so many different types of events and with different organizations. You probably will know her mostly from the event work that she's done with the X4 Qualtrics Summit, one of the biggest events that Utah produces. So really incredible work. Bryce Nobles here with Growth. I'm sorry, man. You always tell me to take off the word head or any
I'm very anti-title. So.
Yes, you're anti-title. So Growth at MX.
Just call him the GOAT.
The GOAT. That's a pretty great title, though. And if anybody's been to the Money Summit, which just finished here a couple of weeks ago, which was a fantastic event. I was able to attend. I loved every bit of it. So fantastic, awesome event. Emilee Valken here, Director of Event Marketing at Pattern. She is responsible, she and her team, with Accelerate 22 and other events, other huge, massive. Guys, when I talk about these events, this is not like little stuff. These are some of the largest events at scale, cost, budget, everything. The coordination that goes into this stuff is just crazy. Lindsey Ivie, co-founder of Ivie League. You guys, I'm certain, see her in everything, in all different. It seriously blows my mind how the variety of events that you participate in, from tacos together to date nights to intimate, small events, and then large-scale events. It's awesome. I love seeing all the stuff that Lindsey is doing and with Ivie League. And then Scott Porter, founder and CEO of San Diablo Churros. Scott, the really interesting about Scott, in my opinion, is the way that he approaches events. He's not only there as, in many times as a vendor, but also as someone creating really special, unique experiences, working on a lot of different events. So he's there on the organization side of events, but also on the vendor side. So a lot of really unique experience there. So I'm excited to hear from everybody today. I've named some of these events. Here, just a couple of pictures that you may recognize some of this. We're going to jump in. I'm just going to leave this on the screen for the rest. I know it's not in the same order of where they're sitting. But what we're going to do here with the questions, we're going to move left to right. We're going to start over here with Scott. I've got a couple of questions prepared. And then, please, anybody else from the panel, feel free to riff. Feel free to jump in on stuff. We do have until about 12:45. Because I want to give more time for audience questions as well. So let's go ahead. We're going to jump in with the first question, which is, how can we leverage events to create elevated experiences that add rocket fuel to our marketing efforts?
I love this question. Thank you so much for having me and having all of us here. I'm excited to learn from you all. What I've found in my experience I've been here in Utah in the food business, but Prior, I was in the aviation, in the airline industry, also in healthcare, and started a nonprofit and done a bunch of things in a very eclectic career path. But what I've seen over the years as the most effective tool that really, I love this, adds rocket fuel to any marketing efforts, is the humanizing and elevating of the brand experience that you create. Whether that's through an actual like massive scale event or a micro interaction, one micro interaction at a time, like those add, that humanizing element is crucial. I love the statistics that actually Ryan Smith shared at X4 a couple of years ago. What would you guys think is like the, how many CEOs do you believe feel like they're nailing a positive customer experience? Any guesses? 90%. Okay, yeah, so very close. 80% of CEOs feel like they're just like creating this amazing positive experience. They then ask that question to their customers. How many of the customers do you think agreed with that? Any guesses? 20, 30. Okay, it's actually in the single digits. 8% of their customers agreed. So huge gap, and I see this as like a tremendous opportunity for all of us in whatever area of influence that we have to create a positive customer experience, one micro interaction at a time. Again, whether that's like creating and architecting a humanized experience one-on-one or a mass scale at something like an X4 or Accelerate. All of those things, like in what I've seen over the year, people buy, we buy the why. We don't buy the thing. And we've transitioned our economy from like a consumer-based economy into a relationship-based, interaction-focused economy. And not all of us as businesses have made that full transition in realizing that it's not just like, oh, hey, I'm gonna give you money and you give me a thing and we call it. And that's good, but we expect more from the brands. That there was a statistic that came out during well into the pandemic. 70% of us will lose faith and trust in a company if we feel that the company puts profits over people. 70%. So in answer to your question, the rocket fuel that I see is humanizing, creating interactions, not transactions. And I see that as the rocket fuel that will help propel our businesses forward and help us thrive and help us leave a lasting legacy for good in the world.
Can I chime in real quick? To echo that as well, I would say like it's also like profit, people, but it's also purpose. And events is an opportunity to align with people that agree with your purpose and further your purpose. Yeah. That's why I said so much anti-title. Find what drives them, their why, their purpose, and then have your events further that. And
your events can reinforce what your purpose is too. I'm sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna pile onto that, and everything that we did at Qualtrics that I've taken to these other companies that I work for now is three things. We're trying to, with an event, we approach it trying to educate, teach them something to get better at their jobs, but to also inspire, so to make them feel something, like really feel something. That's the thing they're going to remember the most, and then to give them like a crazy experience they're never going to forget, right? So it goes right back into what we were saying, is like really making people feel something and humanizing the whole experience is what's going to create this regular customer or prospect and convert them into an actual advocate.
Yeah, and like an evangelist, really. Like the biggest way that we can create evangelists is to create those experiences. Can I share with you something like amazing that happened last night? Do you guys know of Breeze Airways? They're a brand new airline. And David Nealman and his team are starting a new airline again. And we were invited to an event. Their whole tagline is seriously nice. That's their tagline. And then like their first class isn't called first class. It's like coach is nice, nicer, and nicest is first class. And so we were asked to be a part of an event last night with Churros they saw on Twitter that a little boy was using Breeze Airways to go back and forth between here and wherever he was getting his cancer treatments. And so they saw that this was being posted on social media. So the next time that he came here, they threw him a party at the Provo airport. And so all of the Breeze team was there, and they're like, this little kid comes and like have balloons, and Cosmo was there from BYU because he's a huge BYU fan, the little kid. And like, I mean, that's this type of stuff. You talk about humanizing your brand. I mean, amazing. They're planning another trip. They just saw, they found out that someone left a Tonka toy truck. You remember those? Like the toy underneath their seat. And they're planning a whole thing to go and actually give it to him personally because they found it. So they're planning this whole event to like show that they really care. That they are really seriously nice, right? And so that's like it, to reinforce. I love seeing that in action, like that it's about that one-on-one interaction.
Such a great opportunity to build deep and lasting relationships through events like this. I love that. This one is for Lindsey, and I feel like you were fantastic at this, and so I'm really excited to hear your thoughts. How can we better use organic marketing through social channels to promote our events?
Good question. So I come from a lot of startups that I've had to work with, and if any of you have worked with startups, their marketing budget is typically $0. So you have to get really creative in what you do and how you manage those types of events. And I found that we're really fortunate to live in Utah because the community here is amazing. So I've really been able to build some really good relationships with different community partners, different people who are, I don't know if people don't, I think on LinkedIn people don't like the word influencer, but I like to call them LinkedIn influencers, whatever you want to call them. I like, actually a new term that someone brought up was like community builders. So there's a lot of community builders on LinkedIn that are really striving to help everyone else out. So over the last few years, I've been able to build these relationships, and because of that, I've been able to lean on that to help each other out. So I help promote their events, they help promote our events, and a lot of it is just that people want to feel that they're not being sold an event. Like I really like what you said about the why. I'm really passionate about that because I have a sales background and I'm an introvert, so it doesn't make any so I always struggled with like the typical cold calling. Like I don't like the typical sales people do when they throw you into a call center or whatever you have to do that way. So I always had to kind of think outside the box as an introvert. It's like, how can I build a relationship with someone? And that's really how I even leaned into LinkedIn, because I'm like, oh, I can be a total introvert, post something online, and then everyone can see it. And then I'm kind of pushing that without having to go out and like knock doors or do stuff like that. So I've been able to lean really closely with kind of use that as a positive, like being an introvert and having to get really creative with the why, and now knowing that I don't like to be like hard sold anything, and I want to feel invited, right? I want to feel like someone really wants me to be there. So in every approach I do, I DM direct message hundreds of people. So I think typically people see it as like, oh, they're doing like 3 posts, and then all of a sudden they had hundreds of people show up to their event. That's magic. Like, how did they do that? The amount of like hours I spend like personally inviting people to events is kind of crazy. Like John, my husband in the back over there, I'm up till midnight sometimes just like direct messaging people and making them feel like wanted and making them feel like, I really want you to be here. So can you not just, here's a social media post, here's some FOMO. Hopefully you show up. So people need to really feel invited, if that makes sense.
What's cool about that is I do the same thing. And you invite them, they come, and then you have an awesome event. And then they like, let me know about the next one. Then you have this reputation and it snowballs. So definitely I do the ground game to get those LinkedIn out, but then message them again, like, and kind of get that community going that way. So.
Yeah, and then you start conversations like outside of that. It's not like just this copy paste. I try to personalize like each. That's why it takes such a long time. It's like it's very personal. It's like, hey, I did some research. I saw that you're in this space. This is going to make sense for you to come to this because you're going to meet these people. So I try to be a lot more personal in my approach to the invite. But I think it's pretty crowded in the event space right now. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that. There's tons of events happening like over the last few months. So I think to stand out with whatever your event you're doing, you have to think outside the box and you have to do things that are a little more personal versus just the millions of blasts that I see on Facebook, on Instagram, on ads. I think you have to go a little bit deeper for events. So.
I love the way that you explain that, because I think a lot of us, when we think about events, how can we get as many people to these events as possible, drive up registrations, and the advice you're sharing is a little bit contrary to what you would expect of kind of like blast it out. It is like the one-on-one human relationship, connecting with people, like that seems a little contrary to like how much time and effort it's going to take of what you would expect. I love that advice. That's awesome. That is a great tip. And I've actually been on the receiving end of your
You may have had, like, there's probably like 15, sorry.
And no, but when she says she it's very personal, it is. Like, I don't feel like it was a copy and paste. So I love that. Thank you. Emilee, coming to you. Why and how should a company lean into building out or diversifying their event strategy?
Yeah. Thanks, Lindsay. She's also helped with our events, shooting a lot of messages out for us. So appreciate that. Yeah, slide them in. I think everybody up here would agree in the positive ROI of events. It just is, but it can be really scary. And as a company, putting dollars into something that you don't know if it's going to work is not the safest route all the time. So when we talk about diversifying events, I think about starting small and exactly what Scott was saying, doing things that are going to create more connection. So say you go to a trade show every year and that trade show does really well and it builds your pipeline, but those touch points are like overall pretty small touch points. You could spend not a ton of money and have a 10 or 15 person dinner in conjunction with that trade show. So then we're building these real relationships and you can talk to people and have conversations and you're adding value to their life, not only with like free food, but also putting them in front of thought leaders from your company or giving them access to the salespeople that are on the phone calling them, and instead you're having this face-to-face conversation. Growing from that, you can do full experiences with them. So maybe you invite somebody to do something that they haven't gotten to do before, like, oh, I live in Chicago, but I've never gone to this baseball game. So can we like rent out a suite and invite people there? So obviously the like spending goes up, but you can start small. And what's nice about events is that you can always quit. So I try one event and it's like, oh, that didn't actually work out how I expected it to be. You don't have to do it again. It's not like an investment that you are committed to forever. It can be a one-time investment and you can learn from that, and maybe it didn't really work in that city, but trying it in a different city or doing a different type of outreach and really leaning in a personal way like Lindsay was talking about. I think all of those are ways to diversify, but still like keeping it safe at the same time and seeing those like dollars come in after that.
Real quick, just a couple of things with that too. First, it's like the database approach of like with your existing pipeline. We're talking B2B here. Like if you have those big name potential customers, those customers, right? Start with them first. Get that lion's share of revenue in there, so you have that justification on top. But then secondarily, it's really just my mind just blanked on me. But it was really just going after the use the data to tell you where to go after and what markets to do your events in as well. Because you have all your different marketing teams working that data. If you're doing field, doing events, you're not leveraging data to help you drive that ROI, you're making it harder for yourself.
Yeah, I would also add, even if somebody doesn't, this is straight out of a BDR's mouth last week in a meeting. Even if somebody doesn't come to your event, the fact that you could invite them to that event opens that door. So if you're on the phone with them, that you are offering something more than just trying to sell them something opens the door to having these bigger conversations. We have definitely closed deals from events that people never even went to it in the first place. We were just able to have that conversation because of it.
Yeah, the second part came back to me. It's and don't take the ROI of the event right after the event. 30, 60, 90 days. There was an event we did. It was actually right before our Money Summit, so it was like a, throw it together last and get to New York, whatever. And we had like for us, it was like a really small amount of pipeline attribution. We missed on that, right? And then just reviewing it, just as we did quarter wrap up, it went up to $4 million of attribution. We're like, whoa, that quadrupled, like that crazy. So like, don't take the ROI of just who attended that day. Look down the road. I say 90 days out, 60 days out, and you'll be surprised by how much pipeline grew from that event.
There's been a number of comments about the value return on events, and this question, I'm coming to you, Stephanie, with this one, but please feel free, anyone after Stephanie has a chance to jump in on this. I think that most people here who have anything to do with events all experience the need and want to try and figure out how to really understand what return and how do you measure the success of an event, and in more than maybe just money, right? And so Stephanie, that's the question that I want to come to you at with this one, is how do event managers and marketers show the value of an event, and what metrics should we use to measure that success?
Okay, how much time do we have? I think I could talk about this for an hour, but I'll say this. I would break it down to kind of two categories. You've got kind of your primary metrics and your secondary metrics, right? So your primary metrics are really important because that's what you want your team, if you're a leader, you want your team to focus on those. That's your bottom line. Secondary metrics are super important. For example, a secondary metric could be, looking at it from a brand perspective. Did we get impressions? Did we get the mentions that we were looking for on the press side? Did we get the site visits we were looking for? Are we growing as an industry leader, as a brand? You could also look at another secondary metric, for example, on the registration side. Did we grow our registration number year over year, or from event A to event B? Are those people that are coming, are they coming back? Are they bringing people with them? You can look at its success that way. Additionally, I would say of those people that came, what was their experience like at the event? You can measure their CSAT or their NPS score via survey afterward to give that an actual point number on what that value and what the success was like for that event. And I could go off, like you can look at deal acceleration, you can look at customer health score, you can look at all of these things on a secondary metric standpoint. But I will say I think it's important to keep these primary metrics top of mind, because it's so easy, I think, in marketing to look at all these different things and you're almost looking at so much you're looking at nothing, right? So to stay focused, keep the primary metrics top of mind, which is for all of us as marketers is growth, right? Our bottom line is to bring in new names, build pipeline, and close deals, right? So that should be your primary, your bottom line. And I think if you can do that, I don't want to discount those secondary metrics, because as you look at your event plan and build out what you want to do for the year, you're going to maybe see an event that had a crazy ROI or, brought in a ton of new names, maybe wasn't as beneficial on the brand side, or vice versa, where you can't just rule out an event because it didn't produce the revenue that you were looking for. It might be an event that on a branding side, you can't afford not to be there, right? Your competitors are there, you've got to be part of this, and it helped you on a brand side. So if you're looking at it from this whole perspective with all of those different metrics, you're going to create a really healthy, strategic marketing program.
That is a lot.
Yeah, I could go off. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll keep going if you want.
It's big stuff,
Yeah.
right? And I can totally tell that for hours we could talk about unpacking all of that, right? And I think that a lot of people here wish we had the time to do that. I know I do. This question, Bryce, this one's for you, but this is a bit of a follow-up to that question. They play well together. And the question is, event sponsorships can be really expensive. Events in general can be very expensive. So my question is, how can we make an impact at an event without paying for the top sponsorship package or breaking the bank?
It's made for you.
Yeah. The event hack, right? We mentioned that earlier, right? That you got no budget, and you got to go blow it out of the water, right? I would say you think of an event event is you get the booth sponsorship. You're literally in the box, right? To rephrase your question is, how do you get out of the box? If you remember one phrase from what I'm about to say, remember this. Before you go and build momentum, go find the momentum that's already out there, right? Find the people that are already sponsoring the event. They're probably your partners, right? If you don't know them, get to know the people already sponsoring them, right? You find the people that are creating those momentums. Some tactical things here, I would say, just before I get high level again, it's like, there are, like, if you do an event in Utah, you'd be foolish not to include the Silicon Slopes on it, right? There's these very similar type of organizations in every market out there, right? Do some homework on who's building momentum there, who are those influencers in those areas, in those industries, and do they like you, do they not like you? Influencer marketing for events is a huge draw, right? We love doing that. Get outside the box there to really get around it. But I would say, like, when it comes to, like, not having budget, so I would think of it, you want to look at being either reactive or proactive. Reactive is, again, with ethics, playing by the rules, and being proactive is kind of going around those rules. So the rules would be like the sponsorship gets A, B, C, whatever, right? But what you can do, it's like, okay, hey, this event's in New York. What else is in New York, right? What customers are in New York? What? So you want to look at that area, look at those momentum builders there, and then start piecing it together that way. I love doing that. For an example, we had an event in Vegas last month. Huge event. It was like 15,000 people there, whatever. And like the sponsorships for any on the trade show floor was so expensive. Like, we can't justify this, but it's one of those. Again, our competitors are all there. They're all spending there. Like, we got to get in there. So instead of offering that conventional, like, oh, we'll pay the money for the booth, it's like, hey, we'll help with the experience of the event, and we'll give out, certain, what are the things that people need at the event? They need, like, phone chargers, waters, whatever. Hey, we'll be like this help desk, if you will, to enhance the experience of the event. Further, we found we had a little extra space. We wanted to do churros, but I didn't connect the dots. We literally wanted to do churros. So churros at an event, highly recommend. Next time. We talked beforehand about it.
There's always another event.
We talked about it. But instead, what we did was we just did a golf simulator, right? A little this pop-up shop thing in there, a little space.
A little bit different than churros, but yes,
we wanted to pair the two,
awesome.
churros and golf, right? We didn't have enough time to figure out the churros, but next time we will. But what we did there was, like, we did this like golf, and we said, hey, whoever gets the closest to the hole gets, in the drawing for the putter, whatever. So it was like competitive, is whatever, draw a lot of traffic. So it was like basically like $100,000 of free sponsorship that we had there, and it was like they showcased it and all this stuff. So again, it goes back to how can you enhance the experience of the event if you want to do something very direct with the event, if you want to get outside of the event. And we also, for that, like, we rented a restaurant across the street and did a whole bunch of sales meetings there anyway. So, like, we didn't even have to worry about it. It was way cheaper. So we just, like, hacked that event like crazy, which is awesome. Get outside the box, enhance the experience of the event, and be proactive and provide because the people that are hosting these conferences, these events, they're just like us. They're trying to do the same thing we're trying to do a lot of times. How can you help them enhance the experience or make the experience better?
I'm going to break order here because the next question I want to ask also, again, builds upon some of the discussion that we're having here. All of that, Bryce, that takes some planning, right? And anyone here who's worked in events, you know how much planning goes into really creating a successful event. So my question, I'm going to come over to Emilee. My question for you is, how do we create an event plan during our annual planning time? And I'm gonna add to the question with, sometimes we create an event plan for the year and we kind of feel stuck to it. How can we create a plan, and then how can we also have flexibility to pivot during the year?
Yeah, good question. Primarily, I would say when you're creating an event plan, this is like a buzz phrase on our team, but you prioritize for impact. So if you know last year that this event did really well, do it again. You're going to do that event again, obviously. So adding on to that, when you talk about, like, you set up meetings across the street, I talked about having dinners in conjunction with the shows. Where can you prioritize your time and money where it's already being spent and you don't have to do everything from scratch? You know your customers are at that event, so invite them to the dinner. You know you have a lot of people in this area. Same thing, go to them instead of trying to kind of create the wheel all over again. And I think that does change and things pop up and you do need to be flexible. So we as a team try to over plan and make sure that we do have flexibility to pull from one space to another. So if we say over the year we want to do 14 dinners, we know we're gonna do 6 of them in these places. So these are gonna sit on our plate so that we can put them wherever. So if somebody from the sales team comes to us, and we try and work really closely with sales and marketing, obviously we're serving each other. So we want to be able to say yes when a salesperson comes and says, hey, I think this event will be really impactful, can we do something else there? Or we're in conversation with a brand that works in this city. We don't have any event happening there, but I know this is gonna push pipe if we do it. So if you're flexible in the planning and you kind of overset, even if you don't know exactly where you're going to go, that allows you to be able to pool that money from wherever you had it kind of sitting on the back burner into the most impactful space. So prioritize what makes sense and allow the flexibility to be able to pivot when the people that you're working with tell you something is going to be impactful. There's your ROI.
And like, get to know when your executives' travel schedules. Like, they have like your executive assistant ecosystem there. I call it air traffic control. Hey, this is the week where 3 people are going to be in this big market. That's where you can do that event pretty quick. And it's a faster turnaround time because usually you don't have a lot of leeway. But if you have it prepared for it, you're ready to rock.
I'm going to come to you, Lindsey, to riff off a little bit with this too. With your sales background and experience with events, Emilee had touched on this a little bit. Bryce even just alluded to a little bit in his comment. How can sales and marketing teams join together to maximize their event strategy?
That's a great question. I think on that side, you have to see there's 2 different thought processes, right? Like, sales and marketing, they want to achieve the same goal, but the way of going about it is different. When I've worked with, because I think I lean more on like the marketing side. I'm like less salesy, so that's kind of where I'm like comfortable in like the event space. But also I had to go in with different companies and had quotas and different things like that to like close up larger deals. But I think collaborating, so I think Pattern does a really good job at that. So bringing in like the sales team and the marketing team when you're putting together an event so you can get on the same page. I do a lot of more on the consulting side, so I go into companies and I help put on events for them. Typically when I'm doing this, it's very sales driven, but it's very relationship driven as well. So when I put on, for example, B10's one of my clients, so we do these date nights, but it's very strategic. It's like, hey, we want to build relationships with this group of people. And so I came up with this idea. I was like, okay, I'm a working mom. If you want to get me somewhere, like, get me a babysitter. So we actually put on these events where we provided babysitting. It's like, we're going to go to Hale Center Theater. We're going to go to do a jump night, but we're taking care of everything. Like, there's no reason on earth why you would not come to this event. And so that way we can go down the list and we're like, these are the exact people we're trying to build a relationship with. We're providing like the perfect date night. And the cool thing about that is, like, when we go into these different types of events, like, obviously every company has to close business and sales, like, or else you wouldn't exist. But it changes the whole tune of everything, because you go in and you're truly building a relationship. And I can speak to the fact that we have people come back and they're like, okay, now I want to go attend, like, the follow-up there is like, what B10 does really well is like they have these Art of Taxes events that are like a follow-up. So it's like the date night's like, no, we're just building the relationship. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're just building the relationship. You're going to get to know us. You're going to build that trust. And then come learn more. Come check out this Art of Taxes. You can learn about tax strategy or different things like that. And so it's just having that plan in place. So I think you kind of appease like the marketing side with like, no, we're building relationships, we're building trust, and then also the sales side, because you have to kind of follow through with both of those. But I find a lot of success in just thinking outside of yourself and just like focusing on that why. Is like, why would they want to do business with me? Like, especially if you're a service-based company. SaaS is I think is a little different, because you can go online, you can shop around. It's like, okay, this does what I need it to do. I'm going to click this button, I'm going to sign up. But when you're a service-based company, it's really about the relationship, and I think you have to approach it in a different way, more than just like pushing money into SEO or pay-per-click or whatever that looks like. It's like you have to get down to the relationship level. So.
There's a theme here we're all hearing, right? Is events should be helping us strengthen and develop these deep relationships. I love date night idea, by the way. That's so awesome, especially any of you account-based marketers out there. Like, that should be part of your playbook. And talk to Lindsey after, because she kills it. I want to come over to, let's go to you, Stephanie, because I feel like this also continues to build deeper into some of these themes. Let's talk a little bit about empathy and how empathy can impact the success of these events.
Yeah, I love this word, empathy. And we hear it tossed around in marketing all the time, right? It's like literally stepping into your buyer's shoes and seeing things from their lens and view. And I think marketing 101, we should all know our buyer personas, our ideal customer profiles. We should know their pain points on the product side. Like that's basic, right? But I think with event marketing, I think you can be, you can practice empathy by taking it a step further and getting a little more personal with it, right? So, for example, one thing I love to do is we'll comb through our attendees or our registrants and look at their titles, look at where they're coming from, where are there common themes of where these people are from? What are they likely to be interested in? Is this like a Gen Z crowd? Is this going to be our boomer crowd? That's going to affect everything from the food to the swag to the whole experience that we're providing to them. Something that appeals to this younger crowd on the swag side, someone else on the boomer side might want something to take home to their kids or grandkids, right? So really taking it a step further on a more personal level to surprise and delight at events is huge. And I think when you can do that, you're going to, we talked about, creating this feeling and driving advocacy. People are going to be surprised and delighted by that. The other thing I would say with this is you can let them plan the event. You can even take it to the point where we're not even just guessing on what they want. We're literally letting them plan the event. And when they do that, they're more invested. They want to come, and they're going to be wowed when they get there and you've actually taken their feedback and put, the John Legend playlist that they requested out on, for the breaks, or the specific food that they wanted, or things like that, as well as, obviously the most important piece, which is the content and planning your event around what they want to hear, right? So I think that listening and allowing them to be a part of that is really going to create something that's lasting, that makes them feel something, and it's going to give you success. So,
for the students of the game here, when you're talking about involvement with people, there's a great term called the commitment curve. Google it. It's a really cool concept of the more engaged they are, the more fanatic you are with the brand, like you talked about, those really fanatic people, the more they'll commit to helping you. They want to build their brands. They want to go level up. Commitment curve, I'm telling you, study that concept, and you're going to love your events. Are going to be phenomenal because you'll have to do less work. You get other people to do more work for you, which is awesome.
I would add on to what Stephanie was saying about, I think it's been touched on a little bit, but are you adding equal to or more value to this person's life than you are taking away? So I think that follows really well with the empathy conversation. If you understand, and like having the babysitter, if you understand what you're asking of these people to give them your time, what are you doing to make it worth it? Whether that, a couple things I mentioned earlier, like giving them access to somebody that they didn't have access to, giving them knowledge they didn't have before, but just realizing that they don't have to do what you're asking them to. They don't have to come to your event ever. So what are you doing to really show that it's worth it to them? And I think doing that through empathy is a really big point.
And just to add to that, with just coming from the sales side, what's worked really well for me is finding out who does that customer want to connect with? Are those people at your event? So connecting the dots that way and saying, hey, you're going to want to come to this event because so-and-so is going. Not just hey, just come to my event. It's why would they come to your event? What's the benefit there? I think a lot of the times we're trying to sell to them, but we don't realize who are they trying to sell to? Who are they trying to partner with who are they trying to make grow relationships with? So if you can connect the dots there in your outreach to targeted people, I think it comes full circle.
I love that. In particular, we were at a Gartner event maybe 2 years ago, and our account manager at Gartner, he was incredibly helpful at connecting us with the people that we were there to see, that we wanted to have meetings with. And he fought for us. Like, I'm telling you, like, just watching him all week just go and try and get meetings for us, I was like, I'm coming next year because of you. And we killed it at that event. And I know that person, that our account manager, was huge, had a major impact on our success there. So I love that. That's a playbook. Like, that should absolutely be part of your notes.
If I can just underscore like this idea of empathy as a wow, like you said, we're so accustomed to mediocre business interactions and customer interactions and everything that we do. And so that moment when someone says, oh, let me connect you to someone else, that because they're like, oh, wow, they're thinking of, they have my best interest in mind. You're like, wow, I'm going to now advocate for that brand. One of my favorite experiences that happened to my good friend, you might know Emilee, that works at Divvy. She went to Trader Joe's, and she, like, Trader Joe's are great, right? They always ask you when you're checking out, how was your day? They asked her, she was there with her husband, and she said, usually I would just say fine or good or whatever. And she's like, I'm actually going to tell them what happened. So she said, well, we bought a car today. So the Trader Joe's person reaches around behind them, grabs a bouquet of flowers, and says, congratulations. And you talk about empathy as a wow. Emilee then, she just spent, I don't know how much she spent on a car, $35,000, $40,000+. She just spent that on a car. Do you know what Instagram post she posted that day? A down picture of the Trader Joe's bag with the flowers in it. That's the impact, empathy in our businesses, in the experiences that we're creating, whether it's again a mass event that incorporating that empathy there, or it's individual interactions that all of us have an influence in architecting. And so I love that empathy as a wow, because that like will just accelerate everything for you. You know, you have that John Legend playlist. You're like, oh my gosh, they listen to me, they care, right? Because we're so accustomed to brands not caring about us. So that's how we can stand above the fray. That's how we can differentiate. That's how we can accelerate and succeed.
I want to add one more thing to this. You can take it too far, and I can tell you that from personal experience. We did this event. This is just funny, but we did this event where we invited like 30 people up to Deer Valley, and I made like flashcards, and I memorized like who they were, what their food preferences were, what their title was, where they were from, and I think I creeped people out because it's like, oh my gosh, hi, how was the flight from Wisconsin? You know, and they're just like, okay. So I think there's a fine line, right, on like knowing your people and like also
and
like how
and
much you
being a
let them know
stalker.
that you know. So be careful.
Do you know that Ritz-Carlton, like, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to dig through the trash. Not dig. They used to notice the trash by their, you know, and they would notice that, okay, this person always gets a New York Times, or this person likes Kit Kat,
Yeah, it's
or
called
whatever.
being a stalker.
And so they actually have dialed back a little bit on that, but it's because it does have a little bit of a creeper value to it. But yeah, there's a fine line and a balance. I think empathy.
Learn from my mistakes.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. This has been incredible. I've asked a lot of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I have loved every bit of it. I want to open it up to the group now for some audience questions. Anybody, please, any questions for our panel here?
I have a question for Lindsey. How do you feel about my mustache?
This is serious, guys. This is serious.
Just kidding. All right. Really though, I think more than anything, what I
First off, the mustache has to go. So I would say, as far as like overcomplicating it, I think they're just trying to do too much. So I'm all about like simplifying like what you're trying to do. I've done that too many times where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put on this cybersecurity summit online, and we're gonna do a competition with this game. And I had to like cut things out because I think when you try to take on too much, especially the first year event, like if you're just getting into doing an event, like just make it as simple as possible. Like don't try to put in too many things, because like just trying to get the event to happen and trying to get people to show up and all those different things is like enough to kind of feel it out and then make changes and adjustments after that. So I just think simplifying is the best way to go, and not trying to do too much there. But if you want to add.
And if you don't simplify, the things that would have been highest impact start to lose impact, because you're not going to do them as well. You're not putting as much energy into the things that are really going to push you to the next level, because you're just trying to fit too much.
Yeah. Or you're literally going to be too burned out to execute any of it. I mean, truly, like if you take on too much, you run that risk of being on site and being like, all right, we're cutting half of this, right?
Burke. Is Burke, right? Yeah, please.
Will you share an experience where you guys developed an unforgettable experience, just maybe at one of your events that it was like, it kind of was a game changer for that person or that account, something that might have been they didn't know was coming. You mentioned that educate, inspire, and unforgettable experience. I'd love to hear
Yeah.
what you all did.
Is this to everyone? I'll go first. Yeah, so I'm all about like taking an ordinary experience, making it extraordinary. So finding places in your event that are just like rinse and repeat. Like take the easy stuff and make it hard. And I know from event planners it's really uncomfortable, but to do something innovative is always going to be uncomfortable. But so for example, at Qualtrics, one of the cool things, and I wish this was my idea, but it's not. But it's something I was a part of. But we had this idea. We had Tony Hawk coming to speak, so we thought, why not like throw out a half pipe and have him like skate and just surprise people and skate on a half pipe during lunch. Like you're there, you're talking to people, you're not expecting something to happen. So that was a fun like kind of wow one. And I think you can do that on a huge scale with a giant budget, but you can also do it on a small scale where go back to like kind of the pre-event stuff, like getting their insight and things. We had women that were pregnant that showed up, and we gave them like crackers and ginger ale and showed them to the mother's lounge, right? So just little things that aren't necessarily this huge budget. You can do it at every level, I think.
I think Emilee needs to talk about the casino night and what she did there.
Honestly, I feel like I would choose other things as far as individual impact on somebody's life. So Lindsey's talking about at this year's Accelerate Summit that happened in June, we did a casino night that evening as the networking activity. We had aerialists up flying above everybody's heads, and people won prizes and things. But I think that's a really big scale opportunity, and I think smaller scale that is really individual is almost higher impact. So small things, like you can do it small with surprise and delight gifts. We gift people like a nice jacket when they come, or an experience that they just wouldn't have ever done themselves, like race a Ferrari, So there's a wide range of like dollar amounts that you can spend on building experiences, but not only are you giving somebody something that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do before, but you're also building a deeper relationship between your company and that person by sharing in that experience. They're going to remember that they did that, and they're going to remember that you're the one that allowed that to happen for them.
So a few years back, this is kind of when I got pretty deep into like the events game, I guess. I watched a documentary. It was James Lawrence, where he did the 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days. And I had this crazy thought. I was like, hey, I'm going to have him speak at an event I'm just going to throw together and cycle with the group as well. So I put together, I think in like 2 months, because I'm crazy, I don't know why I did this, but it was a C-suite cycle connect. So I invited a lot of C-levels and they did the Alpine Loop, and they got to go ride with James. So they got to go up the loop, come back. He came back, did an incredible. We had lunch. He came and spoke at it after riding with them. So it was just they got to experience riding with him, and then come back and hear his story. And I remember a few years later, I had several people are like, "You need to do that again." Like they told me about the experience they had. It was on a deeper level because they got to like grind through, do something really hard. Like the Alpine Loop is pretty hard. Like it's a pretty hard ride. And then after that, they're all sweaty and tired, and they get to sit down and hear from him. So it's just like full circle experiencing that. And that was just something really cool that I was able to kind of pull together. And I just had this vision. And I think the biggest thing is like, if you have like a thought, you're like, I want to do this, just do it. Like, just figure out how to make it happen and just make it happen.
Burke, I love that question. And I think that in particular, all of it was great feedback. I feel like that really nailed it. Everybody nailed it. That kind of just finished it into the coffin, if you will. I love how creative these ideas are. I think sometimes when we think about events, we kind of have this box that we kind of fit events into. And when we kind of get out of that box, creating these really unique, special relationship-building experiences, that's one that people never forget. And that's one of the events that they talk about years down the road, no pun intended, where, come on, that should have had at least a little laugh. Dad jokes here. I've been cooped up, guys, for a couple of years. So. No, but seriously, that's the type of thing that people look at years down the road and they think that was such an incredible experience. So I love that we can help create experiences like that while also trying to accomplish our strategies and our goals. I love it. Great example. Let's do one more. We got time for maybe one or two, depending how quick we get through it. Yeah, please.
I just have a question about like working with other people or other brands together. Like, what things do you notice that lead to conflict versus like lead to better collaboration when planning events?
When we partner with other companies, so say we're like co-sponsoring an event or something, I think that one company has to take the lead. And if that doesn't happen, I think that's where it kind of leads to a little bit of confusion, or a ball gets dropped because there was an assumption that one team was taking care of it versus the other. Branding is another big thing. If like one company doesn't take care of like, okay, we're gonna put the deck together, it doesn't look like it's a co-sponsored event. It looks like two people just like planned two events in the same space. So that would be my like primary advice, is that one of the companies should really take the lead with their team and designate like who is doing what and how the event flow is going to go.
If you're the company that's like the good idea, the reputation of like, wow, you do great experiences, you'll have the idea, they'll have the budget. And I love doing that. So, but to echo that, like up front, like I would say lay it out there. Obviously, you might have done it before. I would say like, this is what we've done in the past. Be very collaborative up front, but then just have really clear lines and dates and expectations, knowing that events pivot all the time last minute. But I will say be careful who you partner with, especially with your executive team. Just because they're willing to partner, just because they're willing to offer budget, it might not be the right partnership for your brand. So just be really careful on that front. It can go really well, it can be really bad. So just make that call before you make that decision.
And then last thing with that is, if you are having like partners or sponsors at your event, just set, again, really, really clear expectations. And I actually recommend like not even letting them brand their booth. Really, literally, we like, in order to protect the brand at my events, like we set that expectation that we will design the booth for you, give us your logo, and we'll get approval. So they're not showing up with all these different brand things that are going to conflict with your stuff. And same thing with like giveaways, like it can get cheesy fast. And so I think just being really overprotective with your brand and what you're trying to do is super important to keep things clean.
All right, we do have time for one more. If anybody, sorry, I saw that hand first.
Post-event wrap-up stuff. We talked about ROI measure that further out, but what else? What kind of conversations should you have? How do you download that, digest it internally? What do you do with the data? What do you do with the experience? Let's say for the next time. So anything post-event related.
I'll jump. I love doing post-event. That's usually where I jump in the most. It's first thing I'll say is no events in a vacuum. Look at your demand team. Look at that narrative with, I think ABM, an individual account, right? On that level, I guess that's very micro level. What did they do before the event? What's that relationship before? Obviously, that brand experience, and what's going to be the next 3 steps afterwards with that individual accounts. That's being really, really tactical individually that way. What's the narrative? How do these chain together? In the area you're in, when are we coming back, right? So, and then what's that narrative we're going to tell? Like, hey, we'll probably be back next quarter, right? So get that momentum going. Now internally there, I always say you want to be dashboard first. We shout out to Domo, right? We're very heavy Domo users in our company. We have a dashboard that fills in. So at the event, we're scanning, and then we have that data by the end of the event on at least that high-level metrics, who attended, what's the impact of that, and then the executives have that as well. Makes very easy conversations on how we did, very black and white that way, and then we can go make actions off of that. So again, with externally, right, what's that narrative of the next compelling event, whether it's with the sales team or with the community that you're building that way. And then with the internally, right, it's that narrative as well on the single account or on the group, is just have the dashboard beforehand so you don't need to be pulling the data afterwards, because that just is, you should have that already.
And then going back to this empathy thing is, I think timing is crucial with event follow-up. So just understanding, when is your event wrapping up? If I'm coming back from an event on Thursday, I'm not even going to look at anything till probably Monday or Tuesday, right? So just putting yourself in their shoes, understanding what they're going through, they're probably backed up. So that timing and that cadence is crucial, and that can be done through a lot of testing, but empathy is huge there.
This is a really kind of non-data related small thing, but we do keep start stops for almost all of our events with everybody that was involved in it. So pulling in the creative team, if salespeople were at that event, from everybody's opinion and all the pieces that you touched, what was valuable and that we should keep doing, how should we change it, what should we stop doing. So I think that's a pretty straightforward and simple answer, but it's super helpful when you're looking at planning your event strategy moving forward.
Guys, this has been incredible. Such great insights. I think all of us can agree that we could spend hours on so many different individual aspects and facets of these questions and answers. If there was something in particular, that a question that was answered that you don't feel fully satisfied what you were hoping for, and what I mean by this, if you wanted to dive deeper, if you wanted to dig on that and we weren't able to get to it, if you didn't have time, connect with these people, find them on LinkedIn. Such incredible people and such willing and just kind people who are happy. I say I'm volunteering your time. I do this shamelessly because I know how willing they are to support. So if there was something in particular you wanted to riff on a little bit deeper, please find them afterwards or find them on LinkedIn, and feel free to ask your questions, because I know we didn't get to everybody's questions here. I've loved this. This has been fantastic. Let's do a quick round of applause for our panel. This has been awesome. Thank you. Also, just a quick thank you again to San Diablo Churros for coming, for providing such.
Do you want to do the giveaway?
The giveaway. You reminded me. Thank you.
So we have an at-home churro making kit. It's an amazing company, client, team appreciation gift for the holidays. And someone here has something on their desk. So we're giving these away. We're giving this one away. Everyone has access to our Black Friday deal, which is 40% off, which is incredible, insane deal right now through Black Friday. And if your desk has a red ribbon tied underneath, you win this Fiesta in a box.
I can see it.
Yeah, there's that cowbell.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And a big thanks to Riot and, again, San Diablo Churros, our sponsors. Thank you to Silicon Slopes for sharing your space. Please check out our next event. It is on December 14th, 11:30 at the Kiln HQ. Thanks, everybody. This has been awesome.